Hello and welcome to the well-read Monocle. I'm your host, and today we are stepping into the dark, cosmic and unsettling world of Laird Barron. We will be performing a complete narrative recap of his acclaimed short story collection, Occultation and Other Stories. This collection features 9 tales that blend weird fiction, cosmic horror, and the psychological unraveling of the human mind. We will walk through them one by one, exploring the plots, the characters, and the terrifying conclusions of each. So, settle in, pour a stiff drink, and let us begin. The collection opens with The Forest. We follow a famous cinematographer named Partridge, who travels to the remote Moorhead estate in New England to visit an old friend and eccentric scientist, Dr. Toshi Ryoko. Partridge is there for a reunion with Toshi and 2 other associates from his past, the rugged Beasley and a woman named Nadine. Years ago, this group worked together on a documentary in a Bengali forest, a place known as the Forest That Eats Men. During that expedition, Partridge saved Nadine from a river accident involving crocodiles, forging a complex bond between them. At the estate, Toshi reveals he is studying a super colony of ants and other insects, theorizing that when the time of man ends, insect intelligence, or something far older, will inherit the earth. Partridge learns that Nadine is dying of a terminal illness and has come here to say goodbye. The atmosphere grows increasingly surreal. Partridge visits a preserved ghost town on the property called Oran Town, which Toshi uses for his obscure research. During a dinner party, the scientists reveal that they have established contact with a great kingdom, a vast alien intelligence that predates humanity. In the conclusion, Nadine leads Partridge into the fields at night. They embrace in a hollow in the earth, where a buzzing black tide of insects and alien forces swarms over them. Nadine gives herself to the colony to exist in a state of pure consciousness. Partridge survives, but he is fundamentally altered, left staring into the bloody dawn, understanding that humanity is merely a temporary resident on a doomed planet. Next is the title story, Occultation. This tale takes place in a bleak motel room in the middle of the desert. A husband and wife are drinking tequila and smoking cigarettes, playing a game called Something Scary, where they tell each other frightening tales. The wife becomes unsettled by a strange shadow or stain on the wall above the television, which she claims is moving. The husband dismisses it, telling a gruesome story about his uncle's time in the Philippines to distract her. The atmosphere of the room is claustrophobic and toxic, filled with sexual tension and alcohol-fueled bickering. Terrified by the room, the wife goes outside to the vending machine. There, she encounters a giant tortoise the size of a car sitting in the parking lot, staring at her with a glowing eye. She retreats to the room in terror. The husband, now deeply intoxicated, claims the stain on the wall was actually a prehistoric worm that has slithered off the wall and entered his body. He passes out. The story ends with the wife lying awake in the dark. She hears a wet thud as something drops from the husband's side of the bed and rolls across the floor. Then, muffled by the mattress, someone, or something, under the bed begins to laugh. The third story is The Lagerstätte. We follow a woman named Danny, an entomologist struggling with severe depression after her husband Virgil and son Keith were killed in a plane crash. Danny has moved to the West Coast and is experiencing fugue states where reality distorts. She begins seeing visions of her dead husband and son in crowds and public places. Her therapist, Dr. Green, tries to help, but Danny is drawn to a darker solution. She recounts a friendship with a suicidal woman named Norma, who gave her a petrified bone shard, a fetish object used to access a place called the Lagerstätte, a geological term for a sedimentary deposit of fossils, but here representing a limbo of the dead. Using the bone to cut her hand, Danny performs a blood ritual to open a door to this other world. She visits a ruined vineyard that shifts into a vast graveyard of bones and mummified corpses. In the end, Danny is tempted to join her family in this grim afterlife. She nearly commits suicide in her bathtub, but is saved by her roommate, Merrill. However, the story concludes in a therapy session where Danny remains detached, implying she is still psychologically tethered to the Lagerstätte, waiting to join the silent, fossilized dead. We move now to the novella Mysterium Tremendum. The narrator, Willem, and his partner Glenn join their friends, a couple named Victor and Dane, for a road trip in Washington State. In a Seattle shop, they find an obscure leather-bound guidebook titled Moderor de Caliganis, or The Black Guide. The guide lists strange and unknown local attractions. They decide to visit a site mentioned in the book, the Kalamov Dolmen, a megalithic tomb located deep in the forest on Mystery Mountain. As they travel, we learn of their shared past and a friend named Tommy who died years ago in a mysterious accident. They hike into the wilderness and find the dolmen, a massive ancient stone structure filled with strange carvings and a pool of stagnant water. The atmosphere turns terrifying. Victor is entranced by the pool and is attacked by a supernatural tendril that emerges from the water and burrows into his leg. They also see a pale, massive entity lurking in a fissure of the rock. They flee the mountain, dragging the injured and raving Victor with them. Victor is hospitalized, Dane vanishes, and Willem and Glenn try to return to normal life. However, Glenn reveals that Tommy didn't die in an accident. He was taken by a clawed hand that dragged him into the earth years ago. The story concludes with Willem living alone in a farmhouse, armed with a shotgun. The Black Guide was a trap. The entity from the dolmen and the spirit of their lost friend Tommy has followed them home. Willem sits in the dark, waiting for the inevitable knock at the door as the supernatural forces close in. Next is Catch Hell. A couple, Catherine and Sonny, arrive at the Black Ram Lodge in a misty, secluded valley called Old Town. They are grieving. They have lost a child and have been unable to conceive again. Sonny is an anthropologist fascinated by the local legend of the Old Man of the Wood, a pagan entity or devil said to inhabit the surrounding forest. The lodge is run by a strange man named Prettyman and his menacing groundskeeper Lang. It is revealed that Sonny has not come for a vacation, but to conduct a ritual. He is obsessed with the occult and believes he can summon the entity to grant them a child. Catherine is horrified to learn Sonny has sacrificed a goat on the property. Catherine attempts to pay off the groundskeeper to leave them alone, but instead, she is lured into the woods at night. She encounters the Old Man, a horned, bestial figure. In a twist of despair and desire, she submits to the entity, making a pact of her own. She returns to the room and has sex with Sonny. As they climax, Sonny is destroyed. His body disintegrates into a mess of worms and organic slush. The story ends months later. Catherine is in a hospital giving birth to a baby boy. When she looks at the child, she sees it has the eyes of a knowing adult, hinting that she has birthed something ancient. The sixth story is Strappado. Kenshi and Swain are former lovers who reunite by chance in India. Swain is a thrill-seeking art lover, while Kenshi is more reserved. They join a group of wealthy, decadent international tourists who have been invited to a secret exclusive art installation by a guerrilla artist named Van Iblis. They are driven to a remote warehouse in a swampy area. Inside, masked guards force the guests to strip naked. They are presented with two doors, a red door and a blue door, and forced to choose one. Kenshi chooses the blue door. He walks down a corridor and falls into a gravel pit, where he is subdued and tortured. He is eventually found weeks later, wandering and broken. Years later, Swain calls Kenshi. Swain reveals he has seen a tape of what happened behind the red door, a horrific execution involving suspension and cinder blocks. The art was simply the suffering of the participants. Kenshi, unable to live with the trauma and the memory, commits suicide in his bathtub. The story ends with a flashback to the moment of the choice, emphasizing the cruelty of random fate. Next up is The Broadsword. Pershing Dennard is a retired surveyor living in an old hotel called the Broadsword. A heat wave has descended, and Pershing is trapped in his apartment. He is haunted by the memory of a friend, Terry Walker, who disappeared during a surveying trip decades ago. Pershing begins hearing voices coming from the air vents, voices discussing eating organs like kidneys and sweetbreads. He also sees a mysterious woman wandering the halls. He suspects a prank, but the situation escalates when he wakes to find an entity that looks like his lost friend Terry inside his apartment. Terry reveals he did not die but was assimilated by a race of ancient, insect-like beings that live in the dark and mimic humans. They want Pershing to join them. They drag him into the building's infrastructure and torture him. Pershing is returned to his life, but he is fundamentally broken. During a trip to a cabin with friends, the transformation takes hold. Pershing realizes his destiny is to join this family. In a gruesome finale, he rips the skin off his own face to reveal the raw, new form beneath, accepting his place among the monsters. The 8th story is titled 30. Two biologists, a male narrator and his former partner, are stationed in a remote habitat module in the wilderness to study animal behavior. They are isolated, and their relationship is toxic and hostile. Strange things begin to happen. The wildlife, coyotes and bears, act aggressively or unnaturally. The narrator spots a figure in the coyote den on his camera monitors. The woman becomes obsessed with a strange, petrified horn she found in the woods. As their sanity frays, it is revealed they are engaged in a mutual murder-suicide. The narrator has been poisoning the woman's water, and she has been poisoning his food. They are both dying as they hallucinate and attack one another. In the end, they destroy their habitat and crawl out into the dirt. The narrator, dying and delirious, crawls into the coyote den, where he is embraced by a cold, hard hand in the darkness. The entity that haunts the land has been waiting for him. The final story is 666. A husband and wife move into the husband's ancestral family home, a large, isolated house in the country. The husband reveals that his father was a tyrannical, sadistic man obsessed with the occult and Ingmar Bergman films. He also reveals his sister, Carling, is a witch whom the family fears. As they drink wine and the storm rages outside, the husband shows his wife a phantasmagoria, an antique magic lantern show that projects terrifying images of ghouls and demons onto the wall. The images seem too real, traumatizing the wife. The husband becomes possessed by a need to enter his childhood bedroom, which his father had nailed shut. He hacks through the door with a hatchet and crawls into the dark room, only to vanish into a void. The wife flees downstairs, but escape is impossible. She finds a ritual taking place in the living room. Her naked husband, his sister Carling, and the dead father are gathered in a pentagram. The husband is sawing at his own head, and the story ends as the wife's reality blurs into red, implying she is the final piece of the sacrifice. Occultation and Other Stories is a bleak, atmospheric journey into the unknown. Laird Barron links these tales through themes of cosmic indifference, the fragility of the human mind, and the terrifying idea that ancient predatory forces are lurking just behind the veil of our reality, whether in a cheap motel, a luxury resort, or the deep woods. That concludes our recap of this chilling collection. Thank you for listening to the well-read Monocle. If you enjoyed this summary, please like and subscribe for more dives into the world of literary horror. Until next time.